Hey, this is Zach Log the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Chris
Hello.
and Lewis,
Howdy, y'all.
and we are getting together tonight to talk about Rudyard Kipling's poem, "The Covenant." Um, as usual, if you like my work, if you like what I do, please support me. You can go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog the great. There will be a link in the show description. And having said that, um, let me bring up the poem, and they have changed options on here. There it is. Okay. They are enhancing our user experience, I believe, is the usual. This is the term.
One of those upgrades, huh?
Yes. Okay. So let's see. All right.
Still, while we make you transcendent.
Okay. Close that. Here we go. So share screen, and here we go. Okay. If you guys can let me know when that comes up.
It's up.
Okay.
It's up.
The Covenant by Rudyard Kipling. We thought we ranked above the chance of ill. Others might fall, not we, for we were wise. Merchants in freedom, so of our free will, we let our servants drug our strength with lies. The pleasure and the poison had its way on us as on the meanest, till we learned that he who lies will steal. Who steals will slay. Neither God's judgment nor man's heart was turned. Yet there remains his mercy to be sought through wrath and peril till we cleanse the wrong by that last right which our forefathers claimed when their law failed them and its stewards were bought. This is our cause. God help us and make strong our will to meet him later, unashamed. Okay, so I just read for us. So would one of you care to lead off?
Hey, Chris, I'm kind of curious to see what you think about this kind of stuff.
So basically, I feel like what it's trying to say is you can't trust your politicians, so grab your guns.
Amen, brother. Amen.
But yeah, a little bit more seriously, I think it is saying that, but specifically politicians who have sort of intentionally led them astray and sort of brought them down a path where the politicians can then take advantage of them. And it looks like it's gotten to a point where they just sort of look stupid for having gone along with it for so long. So now they feel like they have really only one course of action to take to make things right.
Yeah, it's I was actually when I was looking this up, I found to read it for tonight. I found some commentary on it that I hadn't seen before on the Kipling Society webpage, and they said this was written to do with political events in Ireland in 1914, and I think to me the kind of fascinating thing about this is Kipling was writing about Ireland in 1914, but like the way he writes and the terms he chooses to talk about this in, it's still completely relevant. It still, very much connects today. And I think, I mean, that's a sign of really good writing. Really good writing is writing that, lasts and that will connect 100 and 200 and 300 years later. Whereas, like, poor, middling or poor writing, someone will read tomorrow and then, next week won't even remember that they read it. So that is to Kipling's credit that, something about the political events of his day, something that he wrote about political events of his day is still relevant, to us, still, has an emotional punch over 100 years later.
Timeless. I was trying to think of the word. I was just sitting here thinking, yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about. I know what he feels like. It's like, what? There's a word for that. What is that? Timeless.
Well, and it's, a lot of, Shakespeare's plays, there's, comment. If you, look into the history of them, there's like, political commentary and this and that. But still, it's, still powerful. It still has, a tremendous amount of punch to us today when all of those issues, when all of the, current issues have long passed, there's still something real at the core there. So
something relevant we can take from it.
Yeah.
One interesting thing I think about this. So if you are in a time where, politics has become, corrupt or self-serving, then
You mean all times.
Well, in those times where it's like so bad where violence is the only option for a lot of people, then
Right.
yes, this is directly relevant. But also with the first line, we thought we ranked above the chance of ill. It's like, oh, that could never happen to us. So even
So
if you're in a
poignant,
time,
right?
even if you're in a time where you do basically trust your politicians, your representatives, it's still good to keep this in mind as just sort of a reality check. Wait, do they really have my best interest at heart?
Maybe not.
Well, and the in terms of like America today, the line that really caught me, the phrase that really caught me, we were wise merchants in freedom, so of our free will, and it's like the USA is going to go out and spread democracy because we have all this all figured out, and all we have to do is to go over to these countries and get rid of these corrupt regimes, and we can set things up and everything will be hunky-dory. We're merchants in freedom. And it's like, hasn't really worked out so well, that kind of plan.
It's got its flaws, to be sure.
I have to admit, and I regret this, I was on board for those kind of things then. I can only say my best defense is I was very young. I still didn't understand a lot about how the world works. So people much older than me should have noticed the problems here. But
well, to be fair, the youth and zeal of that kind of message of, hey, we're strong, we're successful, we're prosperous, we're to a certain level content. We may not be happy, but we're at the very least right here. And the desire to want to share that with our neighbors is a very Christian attitude. It's a very, hey, we're doing well. Why don't we share the well-being that we've achieved with others? So I would say that it's more generous than naive. It's more hopeful than totalitarian. Because let's be honest here, we've invaded and fought wars in a multitude of different countries, and those countries still have their own sovereign borders, their own armies, their own peoples, their own cultures. We didn't, like the Roman Empire, just go in with a hobnailed boot and go, yeah, America.
it's it's not the same kind of thing. It's not, conquest like the Roman Empire was doing. At the same time, though, like, you look over the past 2 decades and, like, have we really made things better for these people? And it kind of doesn't seem like it. And so...
More than once, I've kind of sat back with my head in my hands going, oh, what are we doing?
I'm just thinking, it's like, okay, we want you to be free to elect whoever you want to lead you. Oh, if you elect the wrong guy, we're going to assassinate them.
Well, I mean, if
well,
he's
and
got bigger weapons.
Well, and I don't want to spend this whole time on that, but like one other thing with that is like you have to take into account the culture, you have to take into account the history, the proclivities of these people, and like by the time when America had started our democracy, our republic, if you want to be technical, but when America started this, the people of America was a mostly British set of colonies, and they had an established tradition of limited government and some degree of democracy, some degree of the people have a choice, have a say in what happens to them, and the government is for the people, even if it's not even when it was more in more practical terms a monarchy, even if it wasn't by the people, and so there was a setup there that we were able to build upon, whereas Iraq, Afghanistan, they don't have that kind of history, they don't have that kind of government, and you can't what is it, that's actually something I think there's a computer programmer, a computer hacker. I check on his blog once in a while because he talks about cultural issues too. I think I'm getting this from Eric S. Raymond and esr.ibiblio.org. But interesting stuff. He's the guy who invented the term Kafka trapping.
Kafka trapping? That sounds morbid and disgusting. I want to know more.
Okay, so I'll explain what. Okay, so one thing that someone who's familiar with high level programming knows is you cannot build a complex system from scratch. A functional complex system is basically assembling. You start with a simple system and you build on top of that. And, basically in Iraq and Afghanistan, we've tried to just say, it's like you're trying to parachute in a democracy for them, and the systems aren't there. You can't just do that. And so, go ahead, Chris.
Although in some of those places, they actually were a lot more Western in the past, like even within living memory. And yet the religious leaders, state leaders, they forcibly removed as much Western influence as possible. So there was still some understanding, but it was intentionally eliminated. But a lot of that was done over the course of less than a generation.
That's referred to as a zealous overcorrection.
Right. So I can understand why somebody would think that, hey, if this was changed, brought backwards in a generation, we can bring it forward in a generation. But it's a lot harder to get people to think for themselves than it is to get them to do exactly what they're told.
Well, and it's also
words. Oh my goodness, bravo.
It's also much easier to take something that's working and break it than to take something that's broken and fix it. I could go out to my car right now and make it not work. I could do that very easily and have no idea what I'm doing. Once the car is not working, I do not have the knowledge to put things back together again. That's a lot more difficult. And so, yeah. But, Lewis was asking about Kafka trapping.
Oh yeah.
Which, like I said, that's not the main subject, but it's one of the most the most obvious example today would be white privilege, and it's like, oh, you're guilty of white privilege. You need to apologize. You need to you need to repent and sign over a big check to the nearest black person, which isn't. It's not quite to that yet, but that's clearly where it's headed. But then if you say, well, no, I don't have I don't have privilege. I mean, look at this, this, and this. I don't. What privilege are you talking about? And they say the fact that you aren't aware of it is proof of how privileged you are. That is, they make the charge, and then your very denial, or you're even attempting to defend yourself against the charge, is proof of the charge they made in the first place.
By definition. Ooh, insidious.
And so there's go ahead, Chris.
You see, I think one of the issues with that is there are contexts where something like white privilege makes sense if you define the term ahead of time. But I think whenever you get into a lot of discussions about race, like any sort of like nuance is very quickly lost. Because there are legitimate times where like some stuff, like as a white person, you don't think of in specific contexts. Pointing those things out is fair. But whenever you're trying to attach like some sort of like moral thing to that, that's where things start to get really tricky. And then you have people who have heard the term but don't know what it means, and they just use it as a blanket excuse for whatever they're trying to say.
But so that's Kafka trapping, where they charge you with some vague moral problem, and your very denial of it is used as proof of it against you. And Eric Raymond was the one who came up with the term. He's also probably not unrelated. Dog is also now hidden on Google, as far as I can tell. You can search for.
Oh yeah.
You can search for him, and you can search specifically for him or specifically for things he said, and he is not going to show up on Google, which is creepy.
It's,
anyway,
propaganda, silencing, and I object to that. Free speech, man.
I feel like this is the farthest off track we've gotten the fastest.
It's okay. So as I frequently end up saying, back to the poem.
Getting back on track.
I will say, when I was working on this, one thing that it immediately called to mind for me is it's a frequently referenced verse, which is 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. And I think Kipling was kind of going for the same thing here. It was it very much has that feel.
I think you're right. Because when he mentioned God in the poem, is up, God help us and make strong our will to meet him later unashamed. So I think you've got a point there, man. He was calling to a return to God, so to speak.
Yeah, well, and also just pointing out that, at some point, whenever we stand before God, we're going to have to answer for our actions and our inaction.
Yes.
Well, and that is that phrase at the end there. our will to meet him later unashamed. And it's like, not just, knowing that you're going to stand before God, but, wanting it to be, wanting that to be a good moment for you, wanting to be able, to stand before him, and not have to, like, turn away in shame. And that's something pretty good to keep in mind. That's the, kind of long-term, the long-term big picture, which, can, help you make good decisions. What was, I remember, geez, I don't even know where I heard this now. I think when I was a teenager. But the idea, if you're walking along and you're just looking, down at the ground right in front of you, you'll kind of, wander all around. You won't be able to, you won't really get anywhere. But if you're walking along and you have your eyes on something way ahead of you at the horizon, it's very easy to walk a straight line. And so if in your day-to-day life, all you're thinking about is today, right now, it's easy to get, pulled off track, and, not even necessarily into anything bad, just into things that don't matter. Whereas, if you keep your eyes on a long-term goal, you can get somewhere. And that's
you can finish.
Go ahead.
Well, getting onto that, where you want the long-term goal, and also, where you have, politicians who are basically trying to manipulate the people. I feel like that's where you get a lot of, this is the most important election of our lifetimes, because they say that literally every election. So if you have any long-term goal, no, you're told to put that aside, because the decision you make right now is what's important. But it's like, okay, well, I mean, there's stuff I need right now that I could buy, or I could save up my money later and have that long-term goal that's going to pay off more in the end. I think the same thing is like with, political capital. If you cash it all in now, you're going to be bankrupt in the future.
Yeah, and it's short-term versus long-term thinking, and it's a pretty important skill, but it's it can be difficult to learn, and to be honest, like I don't think our society, I think the way our society is set up right now, it tends to reward or encourage, short-term thinking, encourage, thinking about now, hey, take out a loan and get this, this, and that, and you won't have to pay it back until such and such. Well, such and such eventually gets here, and by the time that gets here, you'll whatever you bought is, odds are as good, no payments for 90 days, no payments for 6 months, and by the time that 6 months gets here, whatever it is you bought is probably beaten up and maybe even broken, but you still have to pay for it, and that's short-term thinking, and it's kind of wrecking our society.
Yeah, and we know you don't want this candidate, but you want the other candidate even less. So support this candidate for now, and in the future you could vote for who you really want.
I think Shakespeare actually put it really well, and hinges on both what you're saying, Chris, and what you're saying, Lord Zacklog. He said, neither a borrower nor a lender be. Translation: if you're borrowing money or lending money out, you're going to get in trouble. Either way, it's not a good policy.
Let's see. That is... Oh, okay. Hamlet.
Yep. 10 points to Zacklog. Well done. Ooh,
yeah, well, that was...
I'll give you 5 bonus points if you can tell me who said it.
Well, see, I have it here on Google, so that's not really... Fair. That's not really points to my intelligence. That's just using a search engine.
Chris,
But
how much do you know about Shakespeare?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was about to quiz you on your Shakespearean knowledge.
Let's see. I think I did comedies and histories. I had a Shakespeare class on it, but this was so long ago.
Fair enough. So it wouldn't be fair to ask you. So yeah, we'll pass on that. No worries about it. You're good.
So yes, that's Polonius in his parting advice to Hamlet.
Yeah, no.
Actually, it was his parting advice
not,
to his son.
Oh, okay.
I got you, Zach. You're good.
Yeah, I'm not actually familiar with that one, which I know is terrible. But I'm familiar with the general story. So
Yeah.
You've watched The Lion King.
and what's the one Scotland, PA? Isn't that Hamlet
Yes.
as well?
No, that's Macbeth.
Oh, Macbeth.
No, that's Macbeth. Yes. Yeah, I guess we'll have to fill Lewis in on this one as well. There's a movie, Scotland, PA, which is, Macbeth takes place in Scotland. Okay, so he decided to do Macbeth in 1970s small town America. So he put it in Scotland, Pennsylvania. And instead of killing his lord to take over a kingdom, Macbeth, Mac, kills his boss and takes over a small town diner. And he turns it into Macbeth's. And they sell chicken Macbeths, a quarter pounder Macbeth. So,
Are you for real?
yeah, it's
and
go ahead,
Andy
Chris.
and Andy Dick is in it for some weird reason. He's one of the witches.
Yes, instead of witches, it's 3 really messed up hippies.
Well, the thing is, the witches were always supposed to present like a temptation or a little voice in your ear saying, "Oh, the truth is, it's a bad idea, but we think you should do it." You know, that kind of thing. You know, the little
Yeah,
devil.
that's their role in this one too. So it's actually, if you haven't seen it, it's surprisingly well done. It's interesting because depending on just kind of your mood when you're watching it, it can work pretty well in large parts of it as a comedy, and it can actually work pretty well as a tragedy as well. And so it's worth checking out. Scotland, PA, is the name of it. But anyway,
out.
oh, let's see. Kipling.
Right. To bring things back to Kipling about how foibles and vices will cripple you.
So of our free will, we let our servants drug our strength with lies. And the one part there, I kind of know what he's saying. That he who lies will steal, who steals will slay. And if you assent to one little bit of corruption, it's very easy to get drawn down further. I guess you could say kind of sin has momentum. Once you're moving that direction, you'll keep moving and you'll pick up speed.
Actually, believe it or not. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Years ago when I was in college, I took a psychology class wherein they touched on that exact idea in human psychology, and they called it the Lucifer effect, where you do one small thing where it's a little bit bad, but you go with it. Then you go a little bit further, and a little bit further, and a little bit further, until you are miles away from where you drew your line. No, I would never do that. And suddenly, you're over here leading the Third Reich. I mean, it's quite the fascinating look at humans and how they rationalize doing bad things.
Well, and that's also and actually I forget the context, but no. Okay, I just heard Stefan Molyneux talking about this when he was talking about the screw tape letters, which if you aren't familiar with him, I would recommend looking him up on BitChute. He's well worth listening to. And he said, in Hollywood movies, they always present it like, corruption is this big thing. It's dropped right in your face, and here you are selling your soul. It's crystal clear. Whereas how it actually works is, oh hey, can you do this one little thing? It's kind of against the rules, but it's not a big deal. And then you do that.
We're not even
and the next time you break a slightly bigger rule. And the next time, and as it keeps going, you, like you said, you find yourself deeper and deeper in. I guess that's kind of Breaking Bad kind of shows that, now that I think about it. Would you agree on that one?
Yeah, because Breaking Bad is set up as sort of a modern morality play, where, like Walter White, he's a very proud person, and that pride is basically like a lever for evil to sort of get a hold of him, where it starts off where he can sort of justify it, but it's still the pride that's at the core of the issue, and eventually it just gets so out of control, like he can't even deny it anymore, and he's completely lost. But yeah, so sort of taking that stuff that y'all were talking with, and sort of susceptibility to lies, like we let our servants strength with lies, the complicity there. And I think a big part of that is, so like if you have to pick between candidate A and candidate B, and you have nothing attached, there's no like emotional thing going on, you look at them objectively, you can decide which one you like. But once you choose to side with, say, candidate A, now you're on team A. And just from a psychological perspective, you are going to believe the things that your side tells you without paying nearly as much critical attention to it. If side B says something, you're going to start off just sort of, no, they have some agenda. And you might believe it, but only after you really investigate. But something that team A says, oh yeah, you're already on board.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible. Like, okay, you can be aware of that and you can try to work against that, but I mean, it's just a part of the way we're made, and you're never gonna. I don't think we can ever completely beat that one. Because part of that is we are social creatures, and we are built to live with and cooperate with others like us, and part of that is once you have your people, you've got to defend your people, you've got to side with your people, and historically, if you didn't do that, it probably didn't turn out well for you, and you maybe didn't survive, or if you did survive, well, you're not going to get a girl, you're not going to have kids, if you buck the tribe too much. And so, it's kind of built into us that, you have your people, and, you stick with your people. And that's, and it has flaws, but at the same time, something that is that deeply built into our nature, probably also there for a reason too.
And I think that's what the poem is warning against, because it starts off, we thought we ranked above the chance of ill. And it's, we let our servants drug our strength with lies. Like, I think it's pointing to that as sort of being the problem. And then as a way to tell if this is happening, he actually provides it in the poem. Hey, he who lies will steal, who steals will slay. So it's like, wait a second, the people I'm following, the people I'm putting my trust in, are they lying to me? Because if so, they'll steal. Wait, are they stealing? Well, if they're stealing, they'll slay.
Can I also just go back for a moment and just admire the way you said lever? Because that just sounds so much better than lever. Lever is just lever is just such a much more rolling off the tongue kind of a thing, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you. Thank you.
It actually kind of sounds like what is it? RP, received pronunciation, the artificial accent. But
I will say that's one of those words, whenever I'm about to say it, I have to think in my head, which one am I going with? This one feels right in this context.
Do it. But yeah, it was beautiful, man, and it brought a smile to my face. So thumbs up, man.
well,
Also,
okay, and so go ahead, Lewis.
Sorry, man. I just had a thought kind of pop into my head because kind of a long thought popped in there, but it kind of goes back to the British Empire, where you know how they said the sun never sets upon the British Empire, and then they made a ship called the Titanic that God couldn't even sink. So that makes me think that we let our servants drug our strength with lies. Are those lies just straight up falsehoods? Are they flattery? Are they hyperboles of our abilities? Are they just useless platitudes? I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways you can lie.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I forget where I heard this, but it takes a lot of truth to float a lie, was the expression. And the best way to get a lie across is to mix it in with true things, and then people say, well, this is true, and this is true, and I guess that one must be true.
I don't know that one, but they floated in with a bunch of truths. So
yeah. I believe that's called salting.
Go ahead.
Yes. This is a strategy where if you want to spread a lie, you intentionally release a lot of true information, and you have one or two lies in there. And then if any of the true things are confirmed, it makes it look like the body of evidence as a whole is true. So even if your opponent starts to try to address the things, they have to start addressing individual things, and it just looks a lot worse for them, even if they're pointing out all the true stuff. It's basically just really dirty political scheme.
Somebody's been doing their homework. Thumbs up, bro. Well done. I like a good thinking man.
Well, and the and the last line of the first section there, neither God's judgment nor man's heart was turned. It's like we're there's no, well, and it's what is it, Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. And what has, in terms of human nature, what has been will be, and what is now has been before. And we're not, we have a lot of fancy technology, but in terms of who we are at root, we're still the same people, the same kind of people we were hundreds or thousands of years ago. And acknowledging that and working within that is you know, not what is it? I guess it's kind of a warning against utopia. If anyone promises you they're going to solve all the problems, no, they're probably just going to make everything much, much worse.
Wise words.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the successes we have had in like science and stuff, a lot of it is really dedicated, intelligent people working at very small problems and progress building on itself. Like we have this idea that you have all these like Einsteins and Isaac Newtons who are just come on the scene and make huge changes, but a lot of the actual progress comes from dedicated people and, with a relatively tight focus, just working at it year after year.
Just grinding it out.
Okay, well, I think I covered most of the things I wanted to say about this. Lewis, did you have any last thoughts here?
Actually, let me double check really quick. Yes. One other thing I wanted to bring your attention to. The pleasure and the poison had its way. Is the next line right after he said that the let our servants drug our strength with lies. So he then returns with the lies as it's gone from a drug to a poison. So these lies have gotten so insidious and so damaging that they're starting to just tear away the things, because they were things that were, so pleasant and so wonderful and so nice to hear and pleasing upon the ears, and all of a sudden it's choking us. So,
well, and the other thing with that is, like, I think I've heard this thing that doctors will say sometimes the poison is in the dose,
yes.
and something that is harmless or even beneficial in this quantity, you do just a little bit more and it starts causing all these problems. And so like having a a high view of your nation, having a high view of your people, patriotism is good, patriotism is healthy, but when you start thinking that your people can do no wrong, or that, well, all these things that these other people did that absolutely wrecked their nation, that's not a problem for us. We're going to be fine. That's, when you start to take that same sense and it becomes a poison.
To those kind of people, I say, I have several questions. And then I just pull out my entire Encyclopedia Britannica and just start going through it one article at a time. Did you know that?
Well, and I think the point that y'all are both getting to, like you said with the poison being in the dose, I think, well, like, okay, that's basically what a narcotic is, or like any sort of like hard drug like heroin or something. Like, it's pleasure and poison both. And then whenever you sort of take that into like a wider concept, like, okay, you can use drugs like that, opioids, in a medical sense where it does produce a good, but it all depends on how you're viewing it. So like even something like nationalism, like you can take that to one extreme where it is, like a hard drug, like a junkie or something, where it is damaging, and you can use it on the positive side in an intelligent, moderate way, where, hey, if I care about my nation, I'm going to address its flaws. Whenever I see it going down a path that it shouldn't be going, I'm going to call that out. So in both of those cases, you have someone who loves their country, but one of them, the love is actually leading to its destruction, and one its salvation.
Well, and the other thing with that is, and I'm pretty sure G.K. Chesterton talks about this at some point, that like a nationalist, in his case he's talking about England, an Englishman who loves his country, and loves these little things that make it England, understands that a Frenchman is going to love France and is going to love the things that make France distinctive and want those to stay and want that to stay French, and he will say, you know what, I'm totally with you there. You have your people, you have your traditions, and you love them, and I get that, and so I think that's part of the healthy view of that. Instead of, well, we're going to go out and, make everyone like us, which is, okay, I will say, I'm a Christian, so there has to be a little bit of that, but it doesn't, have to be, it doesn't have to be everything. So anyway, Lewis, did you have any last thoughts on this one?
I do, and it kind of builds on everything that we've kind of been talking about the last couple of minutes. I think I don't know where it came from, but I think it's a Buddhist proverb. I think it goes something along the lines of moderation in everything, even in moderation. So, I think that wraps up what we've been talking about rather beautifully.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining me tonight, and we will say goodnight.
Have a good one.
Adios.